Batting Cleanup is back. Evan Kamiko's already laughing. Who knows why he's laughing, but again, here we are. Welcome in, everybody, to Batting Cleanup. Good to be with you, Alyssa Orange, alongside Evan Kamiko. We're a day later today. Please forgive us, but we had SEC men's basketball yesterday and spring football, so we got a little sidetracked, had a lot going on, but excited to talk today because it is the start of SEC play for both Arkansas baseball and softball, so we're going to throw some softball love into the show today. Excited for that. But Evan, since you're already laughing, and people at home are probably like, why is he laughing? You've probably got to explain yourself.
Yeah, I do. So right before we went on, I was telling Alyssa I have my hat of the week, the new segment that this is now week 3, and she goes, "Oh, I wonder what hat it is. I bet it's your Ole Miss hat."
Yes, yes. except for all Arkansas fans are booing, but
oh yeah.
We bought that in Oxford, and he was so excited to come back from his Grove adventure with a hat.
And it's funny because, and I've talked about this with you, I've talked about this with Jacob, but going into football season, you're like, okay, what trips do you want to do? You got to stay back some weeks, and you're going to come some weeks. I was like, great. I was like, just give me Alabama or LSU. Like, that's all. So you let me go to Bama. But instead of LSU, it was Dallas and Ole Miss. And quite honestly, like, I was not really looking forward to Ole Miss. I think that was probably the weekend I was least looking forward to, and looking back on football season, that was the weekend. That was easily my favorite weekend of like all 3. So that was just really cool. And I said to you and Jacob and, you know, everyone who follows us and the 150 weekly viewers we get, which is very awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I had my hats of the week, and I knew I wanted to get a light blue Ole Miss hat. Didn't know anything else about it. So I dragged Jacob during the Grove. We walked through the Grove kind of in between the game, and we were done with all of our pregame stuff, and to the bookstore so I can go and buy this hat. And we saw this logo, and like, there's a picture that Jacob has of me just contemplating what hat I want to buy. And he's like, this dude's not even an Ole Miss fan, and he spent 20 minutes debating which light blue Ole Miss hat he wants to buy. So I ultimately ended up with the Mississippi and Shark logo. I thought that was really cool. I also have another Ole Miss hat. So
nice.
Maybe I shouldn't be admitting that to an Arkansas
No,
crowd,
that's okay.
but here we are.
It's all right. It's appropriate because SEC play does start. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm sure Lane Kiffin very appreciative of the hat that you bought while in Oxford. So if anything, 100%. I know that you have his support, whether or not he listens to our show, which he probably does not. He has better things to do. But, you know, Ole Miss is a team that won the World Series a couple of years ago, and is a team that's kind of struggling right now when we want to take a look at the SEC, because I think we can easily jump in right there, Evan. Arkansas starts with Missouri. Missouri 9-5 right now. Ole Miss is kind of, I say struggling, but have been tested and lost some games early on. So has Mississippi State, who has also won a World Series a couple of years ago as well. Then you look at Texas A&M, and Mike Irwin and I were looking at this, and here's kind of the top of the league right now. A&M is undefeated. And you also have Georgia and Tennessee that are 17-1. Arkansas, the number 1 team in the country, 14-2. But it just really speaks to how battle-tested Arkansas has been in this non-conference segment before SEC play has started.
Yeah, and that goes to show you, and we kind of talked about it early in the season where we're like, we don't necessarily know a lot about these, you know, smaller programs that are coming, like a McNeese State. You really only knew the big, and James Madison, you really only knew the big, you know, selling point was the Oregon State, Oklahoma State, and Michigan weekend. And at that point, you're like, Oklahoma State, not that good this year. Michigan, you know, middle, bottom of the Big Ten. But Oregon State, you know, they've dropped a little bit. I think they're now 7. They were up to 4 last week. But that's where Arkansas got battle tested. And that's where you knew, oh, okay, this team's legit. Like, Hagen Smith turns around, has that 17 strikeout game. The offense getting timely hits. I think Ben McLaughlin and Peyton Holt both that night. But overall in the SEC, it's a really good time to be a baseball fan. And that just goes to show you with what you're saying, where you have these 2 Mississippi teams and Mississippi schools who, you know, they're starting to get their stuff together. Ole Miss, like you mentioned, you know, they got off to a tough start. They had a series in Hawaii. I stayed up till 2:00 one night just watching that because I was so interested in just college baseball being back and wanting to watch as much as I can. And Mississippi State, again, continue to move forward and get better. Dakota Jordan, he's one of the best hitters right now in the SEC West. And, you know, Mississippi State and Ole Miss slowly getting around. But I think the matchup that intrigues me this weekend, and originally I was going to go with, I think Mississippi State plays LSU, and, you know, you'd like to see how LSU is. 2 of their starters both have 0 ERAs.
Is that in Baton Rouge?
That is in Starkville.
Okay, so at Dudy Noble. Cool. That'll be fun.
Yeah, which, you know, that's a stadium that we both, I think, want to go to. Hopefully, Dave, if you're listening this week, you can schedule a away series at Mississippi State next year.
Maybe. Fingers crossed.
But you're right. I think it's that Texas A&M Florida series that's really intriguing. We've talked about Jace Laviolette already on the podcast, and we've talked about Florida struggling. But oh man, I'm blanking on oh man, now I'm blanking on his name.
What team
I
are
don't
we
know.
talking
Florida,
about?
we're talking about Florida.
You
It's
talking about Caglione?
Caglione. Thank you. It was like
Mhm.
the Italian name on the tip of
Right.
my
It's
tongue.
right there.
I
Yeah.
just couldn't get it. I couldn't get it off. But
It's
we've
okay.
talked about these guys already, and that's a matchup in Gainesville.
Yeah.
Because Florida, even though they're still 8th in the country, they've lost a couple of games lately. They've lost 6 games. I think they
lost
barely
on
beat the
Tuesday.
series against
Just go ahead and
Miami.
say it. They
Yeah.
lost on Tuesday.
They lost on Tuesday to another undefeated school in the country who I think you know a thing or two about in
Go
Florida
Noles.
State. Yeah, go Noles. But that's a matchup, and also it's that Tennessee Alabama where Alabama's this team that's really flying under the radar. We haven't talked about them really at all. Gage Miller leads that team in 30 runs. Ben Hess has 3 wins, so that pitching staff is slowly turning around. And Alabama's got one of the top freshmen in the SEC, so to see them go up against Tennessee, another SEC team that just looks like an absolute lawnmower right now, and they'll cut any other team down, should be really interesting. So, SEC baseball being here, it's a really exciting time right now. And, Arkansas, I think, gets a little bit lucky with the fact that they get to face this Mizzou team, because this is a Mizzou team in year 1 of a rebuild. You don't know really what they're going to give you and what they're going to get, but I think overall it's a really good matchup for Arkansas.
Yeah, they're coming off that win over Kansas, which I know was big for them. And I know Dave Van Horn really talked about that, kind of giving them some momentum heading into the week. But Missouri baseball just really hasn't been what Missouri baseball was historically for a long time, really for about 5 or 6 years, I think. And so, you look at a program in an SEC league that, everyone is getting better. There isn't a weekend anymore where like Kentucky baseball, that's a win. Like Kentucky baseball playing really, really well. Georgia, a team that you didn't talk about, also 17-1 with Tennessee. They've got so much power right now offensively, and their best player, Chris Condon, basically leads the league in every batting category. And so they're playing really, really well. Alabama, who lost their coach a year ago to a betting scandal, is playing really well right now. And so if you're Missouri, you're getting to slowly, hopefully build that program back up. But it's hard to do in this league because everybody else is about 3 steps ahead of you. So I'm interested to see what this Missouri team brings to the table, but really, more importantly, how Arkansas handles themselves. You kind of still want to stay on that even keel. It's why I love Dave so much, because the team takes his approach, and they don't get too high or too low. They're very, business oriented. And that's what you want to see out of this team when you take on a Missouri team, because, outside of this game, fans just are irritated with Missouri. I think that's just how it is for Arkansas fans, the way that this Missouri rivalry in all sports has been shoved down their throats. And then when you look at what the SEC did and said, these are your 2 permanent opponents, you're playing tennis, or you're playing Missouri, and you're playing LSU, right? Ole Miss. It should have been LSU and Ole Miss, in my opinion.
Yes.
But it's Missouri and Ole Miss. And so, that irritates fans even more. And we can talk about how I get it, because I think Arkansas baseball should be playing LSU baseball every single year. I mean, that is a rivalry that's giving you ridiculous, crazy, crazy games. The Rally Possum, you could go on and on and on about that rivalry. And we might not be seeing it every year anymore. But, if you're Arkansas, you just got to take care of business, because the league is really good. And these are series that you cannot trip up.
Yeah, and we do get to see the LSU team come to Fayetteville in 2 weeks. That series is, I think, the 26th, 7th, and 8th, whatever that weekend is. But you're absolutely right. It's a really intriguing matchup with Mizzou. Carrick Jackson, year 1, like you said, Alabama went and they got the coach from Maryland, and Maryland was at one time a really powerhouse Big Ten team, even though they didn't have that postseason success year in and year out. Being in Big Ten land the last couple of years, it was always Maryland at the top. Iowa, Indiana would sneak up there. Anything to reference my Hoosiers, I'll do that. And then he moves down to Alabama, and Alabama's got a good squad. Charlie Condon's a dog. Like I've said it already, and he just, you just sit back and watch a game. He might have 4 home runs this weekend against Kentucky. Like he is that good, and he makes that Georgia team even better, even though their pitching staff is a little, fraudulent. But again, we look around the SEC, a lot of these teams, like in A&M, they haven't really played in Georgia, and Alabama haven't played that top tier competition that Arkansas has. And, we'll talk about Missouri because there's a really interesting, family dynamic with Arkansas and Missouri, and that rivalry that fans, don't like. But it goes even tighter when you look at some of these players. Missouri's leading hitter right now, his last name is Lovich, and if that
Jackson
sounds anything
Lovich,
familiar, that's Jackson Lovich, the brother of Ross Lovich. They also have a younger brother, Eli, who's in high school. So there's going to be a lot of Loviches this weekend at the ballpark, and it's really cool. We forget Ty Wilmsmeyer and Ross Lovich both came over from Missouri, so there's ties, and unfortunately didn't get the chance to ask them last week. And maybe Dave talked about this. He actually didn't talk about this yesterday, just about the family thing, just about what it means. And I kind of asked, a while back about, just what does it mean to be playing to Ty, in front of these Arkansas fans? And he said it's a lot different than what he was used to, and I think that's something where, you get those small little jabs in this rivalry, or, this quote unquote rivalry. I'll use air quotes. Actually, hang on. We'll use something even better.
We got the tinfoil. Great.
The tinfoil hat's coming back this week. We talk about it in the quote unquote rivalry of the tinfoil hat didn't stay on too long.
You got to mold it to your head better. Okay.
I know, but I did my hair and
oh,
I did my hair this morning. That's why I'm not wearing my hat because I already showered. But and we see with this team and they have some pieces and Jackson Lovich is going to be a piece for a while. And they have some returners, Matt Garcia, Trevor Austin. Both of these guys are coming back. And, Austin hit 311 last year, and Garcia has played pretty well in the infield so far. So it's a team with pieces, but they don't have everything put together right now because, again, it's year one of a rebuild. They have to reestablish the culture of Missouri baseball. And eventually, it could be a good thing for Arkansas if this, Missouri team doesn't figure out the rebuild in the next couple of years, where Arkansas can look at that series and go, yeah, we know we have that series. Like, Missouri fans looked at the football game and said, yeah, we know we're going to win that game.
Yeah. You want those to be competitive, though. Like, basketball wasn't competitive, and football, was not competitive for Arkansas. And so with baseball, everything points towards the Razorbacks. But you want these teams to be two really good teams going at it and to be a fun series. Though fans love winning by big margins and all that kind of stuff. But you do want it to be competitive. You know what's crazy as I'm sitting here and we're talking about Missouri, the one team we didn't even talk about yet, and this is how loaded the SEC is, didn't even mention. I mean, Vandy's on a 9-game win streak right now. I mean, it's Vanderbilt baseball. We hadn't even said it. Like, I was thinking over here, it's like, holy cow. It's incredible how stacked this baseball league is. And it's just really fun. I'm excited. I'm excited for you. South Carolina, which Arkansas plays a couple weeks from now, to kind of get this going. But looking at Arkansas and what they have to do, he was asked yesterday, Dave was, about his starting rotation. And we've seen that, they don't have to have those guys go for long periods of time already this season because they don't need to. And so he was asked, do you see them having a little bit more of a longer leash? And he said, absolutely. Now that we're in league play, we'll let them go until they don't need to anymore. And so that pitch count is going to get wider and it's going to get bigger. And I think that's the biggest thing we're going to see is, can Hagan pitch a whole game or, pitch 8 innings? What is the longevity of these guys on the mound? Because they're going to have the opportunity to go a little bit longer than they have so far this season.
And I have to say, I really do like the way that DVA just handled, the pitching staff and the bullpen right now. And again, we're in that beginning stretch of the season, and you kind of mirrored a bit to the MLB. Like, really, the first month of college really goes from, April 1 opening day to really about June 1. So that first 2 months where pitchers are in this buildup phase. They're not in we're going to go and throw Hagan Smith 7 to 8 innings. Like, if he's struggling, look, last weekend, cold weather's here in Fayetteville, that definitely, impacted pretty much all of the starters. You could see the fastball command last week wasn't where it was for Brady and Hagan, but their secondary pitches are too good to not locate. And just the ability to locate gave them a huge head on for Arkansas. And because it's consistency, right? Like right now, you only need 4 to 5 innings out of these guys because your bullpen's going to step in. And, we're starting to see now the bullpen pieces come in. Hagan will be on the bump tonight, 2.12 ERA against Logan Lunsford, 1-0, 8.36 ERA. So pitching tonight obviously favors Arkansas, as the pitching pretty much most of this weekend will, and most of the season will. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing that I like what DVH has done and said, Hagan's fastball is not there, but we're not going to work up his pitch count. Hagan could have gone back. I think he probably wanted to, the way he was walking off the mound in that last inning on Friday, but but there's no reason to, right? Like, why are you going to force your guy right now to go longer than he has to when you know that bullpen, you saw Will McIntyre as the first one to be brought in. He was again on Tuesday in that win against Oral Roberts, another college baseball World Series team last year.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting and intriguing part about this bullpen of the mix and match pieces. And we're finally starting to see it get more and more concrete. Because if Brady Tiger can give you 5 innings every week, that's all you need from him, right? Like that's your Saturday starter. You're gonna ask Hagan, go get me an eight inning win in a couple weeks against LSU, and then down the road in Columbia and against Texas A&M and all these big games against Florida and whatnot. But you don't need to do that right now because that's not how you have to win these games. And I think the hitting keeps to get better and better, but it's the pitching that's driving this team. And you're seeing the emergence of maybe a freshman closer right now.
Yeah, well, I was about to say, I know that Gabe Gackle is a guy that you've really watched and you've enjoyed pitching and have kind of done a deep dive into exactly how the freshman has been so successful this year.
Yeah, he is a lot of fun. And again, when you can pump as a freshman 96 to 98, his velo was down on Tuesday, it was sitting 94 to 96. But in that warm weather, again, ball will travel faster and the bats will get going. We've talked about this week in and week out. And right now for Gabe, it's somebody who didn't think he was going to come to Arkansas, was originally committed to UCLA. And, when the news came that UCLA was going to the Big Ten, Pac-12 baseball is better than Big Ten baseball. Big Ten baseball is probably the weakest baseball Power 5 in the country. I think that's very fair to say, with the Big 12 being consistently good. And obviously the SEC, the ACC, the Pac, and now the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever you want to call it, is Pac-2. Mm-hmm. So when they left, the door opened for Matt Hobbs to go out and get Gackle here.
Out of his home state.
Yep, exactly. I mean, that's huge. The kid's from California and came to Arkansas. It's really rare, and we've kind of talked, and that's something that, for me, I like to talk to these athletes about is why Fayetteville? Like, what drove you here? And, unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of moments to talk to Gabe Gackle so far, but hearing his talks on, with Matt Hobbs and those interviews and all the, tertiary things that we can consume as media, that's just something really cool to see why he came here. It's the competition, the level, and, really just the pitchers right now, this staff. I asked Hagan last week, why are you guys so confident, throwing Gabe out? And he's like, well, he showed. And even Kendall Diggs said the other day, he was like, wow, like this kid's legit. Like that's all everyone was talking about. And to see now that translate to the field, because, we've seen that before where take Gage Wood, a guy who had a really stellar start last year and kind of lost his footing. And still, it seems like he's a little bit lost right now as well. I think that's something that's more fair than not to say. And to see, Gabe Gackle really settle in that closer role and be able to come on with the bases loaded and 1 out and get out of jams and limit damage. He didn't do it his first time. Like that's something that I think people slowly forget. Like that James Madison game, he gave up that big hit, so JMU was able to tie it on that opening day. Mm-hmm. But now we're seeing him in these situations be able to handle adversity and throw that curveball on any count. And that's something that's really going to elevate his fastball, especially when it gets warmer outside.
Yeah, and you talk about Gage Wood, and, obviously you understand the struggles as a pitcher, especially a young pitcher. He's just trying to kind of find his footing, like you mentioned. But the good thing is, with Gabe Gackle performing the way that he has, all Gage Wood has to do is be himself, right? So now you've got 2 weapons that come out of the bullpen, and, like, that's the biggest thing I think he needs to realize. Is like, yes, obviously – you're a bullpen and you guys are a team, but you're still pushing each other to be better and competing for spots on the mound and time on the mound. But at the same time, like, they don't need you to be anything other than who you are and who they recruited out of Batesville, right? So just get back to being who you are, and there will be room for you, specifically in a postseason run. If you've got those 2 guys who you can call and have them come in and be successful, I mean, that will be huge for them down the stretch. So I hope he finds that. I don't know if he's listening, but just be yourself, Gage, and I know you're going to come around.
And I love that point that you make of just being yourself, and that's something where, other people might try to, draw you a certain way and tell you how to do a certain thing. I go back to experience in high school of, going into my freshman year, like I struggled and, was playing for this club team and they changed my swing. I was always that 5'3", 5'4" outfielder who was really fast but couldn't really hit that hard. But knew, my original hitting coach was very keen on your contact hitter. Your power will develop when you get older and you get bigger and stronger. And going, I was like, I wasn't, doing great, and then switched, to this club's hitting coach, and he tried to make me something I wasn't, and that was a pull hitter, power hitter, caring about that launch angle and all of these little statistics that are now really big in the game that I don't agree with personally. And trying to pull everything and get everything up and elevated. And my game wasn't that. And I'll always remember I was at a tournament out in, I think, Delaware or Maryland. And, I'm struggling. It's an awful weekend. I just want it to end. I'm leaving for summer camp in a couple of weeks. So I know my time's kind of running down on this team. And I always remember it at bat. My dad goes, "Go back to your original swing." And he just screamed, my hitting coach's name was Dennis Sasso. And he's like, "Sasso." And I knew in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to switch this swing, single up the middle. And then my, going back to that content, short and compact. It's why I love Kendall Diggs' swing, because it's short. His hands are quiet. He doesn't have a lot of movement. It's yes, 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 trigger. That's what I love about his swing. And that's what I went back to. And eventually, still struggled a little my freshman year. And freshman year coach was like, "You're never going to make varsity." And then ended up hitting, 460, 470 my senior year of high school in varsity. And that just those little things of getting back to who you are and understanding what your body is and what your body type is and how you can play the game of baseball to the best of your ability, not to the best of a coach's ability.
Yeah.
I think that'll go really far for Gage Wood.
Yeah, you hope so. So I'm really looking forward to it. Something else that Dave said, and I'm going to play this clip real fast, just talking about with Peyton Stovall being back, what this lineup and infield's going to look like.
You're going to bring Peyton Stovall up.
All right, so what do you think? It's not a bad problem to have, but obviously there's not enough positions on the field for everybody. And so if you're Dave Van Horn with Peyton Stovall and Peyton Holt and Jared Sprague-Lott, what are you doing tonight?
I don't know. I think whoever you throw out there, you're in such a good situation. I think it's going to be, if you want my honest opinion about what I think the lineup is going to look like tonight, I think it's going to be, Stovall at second. He's going to be leading off. There's no way. I think he's found a spot, and he might drop to 2 to 3 depending if his power's up or whatnot. But I like Kendall. I think Sprague-Lott's going to be at third. I think Peyton Holt's going to come off the bench, and you're going to see, Aloy, obviously, he's hitting the crap out of the ball now. It's so good to see that. And, we got a little nervous, but
you got about Souza too. Sorry.
Oh yeah, he's my DH.
Okay.
I'm getting
okay.
there.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm getting there. I think Souza DHs, and I think Hudson White will be behind the plate. We've seen too much struggle in Ryder Helfrich right now, and same with Hudson Polk and Parker Rowland haven't been hitting great lately. I think Souza is going to be DHing tonight. And so who do I leave out, unfortunately? And it's Peyton Holt. But, if the defense needs something, if Sprague-Lott doesn't get going, you can spark plug Peyton Holt in and be very fine. So I think that's where he goes in the infield. I think Ross Lovich will get the start tonight in the outfield. I think Dave will really honor that kind of family game in the opening night. I think, Lovich is hitting really well as well right now. And, then you'll see, I think, Wilmsmeyer in center and Kendall in right. So that's probably the defensive alignment I'll go with. And, a guy that we don't talk enough about, Ben McLaughlin at first. And, he deserves all the recognition just because he's consistent. The glove has been better than what we expected it to be. So to answer your question in short, that's my defensive alignment tonight. That's what I think Dave goes with behind Hagan. But I do think this is an awesome problem to have.
Yeah, it's not a bad one at all. Again, Arkansas and Missouri kicking it off tonight at 6:30. Saturday and Sunday's game are at 2 p.m. All of them.
We forgot something, and I know we wanted to talk about this a week ago.
What?
Logan Forsythe calling games for the Hawks.
I know.
We haven't talked about that.
I'm sorry. I totally forgot.
I know, and that's
I have to meet him.
Like, wait.
I have to meet him.
Yeah.
Like, I have to have a photo. Because I love how it was like Logan Forsythe on his lower third, former Arkansas second baseman, World Series runner-up, Dodgers. I was like, thanks a whole lot, guys.
World
the Astros cheated and they should have won. So I don't want to talk about it, but if I find him, I'm gonna take a photo because it's pretty cool.
I think
it's pretty awesome.
We'll be on the lookout for him tonight. Is he calling? I don't know if he's calling the game or not.
I don't know, but we're gonna find him regardless. So
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see who's on the call tonight.
Help us out, listeners. Hashtag Alyssa wants to meet Logan.
Yes, I do. I just want a photo. That's it. Yeah. Go Dodgers.
And I'll hang it right next to my map that you.
Yes,
yesterday.
I had to get him home safely through the rain, so I had to draw him a map. He's all about what is it? Landmarks. And things and not streets. So beautiful little
landmarks.
Got him from Dixon Street to Uptown Apartments without going over the scary bridge, so he was fine.
listeners, don't. I don't live in Uptown.
Oh
Don't-
yeah,
don't
no, he
come find
doesn't.
me at home.
He lives near
I live in the
Shogun.
boonies.
Um,
I live
so
at the movie theater, the Malco Razorback.
he does. He sleeps under the seats.
Oh man, I'm
Um,
getting canceled. Someone's gonna show up at my door like at
No,
midnight tonight. and
that
I'm gonna
place
just be,
is
like, listening to
huge. Don't
music.
nobody know. Don't nobody know. We're not going to put yourself out there like that. Okay, hey, look, we got a couple of minutes, but I do want to talk about softball because it's kind of interesting. They are one of 3 SEC teams who have not started SEC play, and usually they all start on the same weekend. Arkansas did not. They're playing Auburn at Auburn, who did play and lost 2 of 3 last week to Missouri. So it's kind of a interesting weekend for softball, playing for the first time against a team who started league play the week before, but also it's the return back to Auburn for Bri Ellis, and I know that she is excited to just go back there and quiet the noise, if anything else, for everything that was said after she decided to part ways with the Tigers and come up here and play at Arkansas. So looking forward to what Arkansas softball can do. And again, I think she is more motivated than anyone, being the current SEC player of the week, to go down there and have success.
I mean, let's be real. Bree's gonna drop bombs. Like they're you just kind of expect it at this point. It's so much fun watching her play and
Yeah.
watching her hit. And anytime you go up there, she's a scoring threat. Whether that's the long home run, versus being able to hit a ball, poke a ball the other way into right field right field because she is a righty. See, I just it takes me a second to realize those things. But what I'm really most interested in for this weekend for softball is their pitching staff. I think that's kind of the biggest question right now. The offense has been able to do stuff. We've seen Hannah Kamenson kind of climb up that lineup from, not really holding a lot to now hitting second in this lineup and getting on base. She's done a really good job at that. Atalia Rio, seeing her back in the lineup, I think has been a really, beneficial thing for Arkansas. You saw one of the Kamensons also play at shortstop, and now seeing her. And again, I think it's a big weekend for Bri, but I'll be most curious about this pitching staff. I think that's where Arkansas has really gotten themselves in trouble lately. Is their pitching? It hasn't necessarily been as maybe deep as people would think it is. There was a lot of questions going into it. Getting Reese Bauerlein over from Mississippi State. Morgan Leinstock has looked really, really good coming from Southern Miss. But really, outside of Robin Heron and Morgan Leinstock, this pitching staff is a little bit up to suspect.
Yeah.
So that's something I'll really be keen on this weekend when we're watching these games when we can be, is how does the pitching staff going to do? And, what's that return look like for Bri, even though we expect her to drop bombs?
Yeah, it should be fun. Again, they are at Auburn this weekend to start SEC play. All right, that is going to do it for this week's Batting Cleanup. Thanks so much for watching, listening, however you pay attention to the things that we ramble on about. We appreciate you always. For Evan Kamiko, I'm Melissa Orange. We'll see you next week.